What's up guys, how's it going? It's John, and in this video we're going to take a closer look at the new Brawler64 controller by Retro Fighters. This just recently came out. It's for the N64. It's an updated version to the original N64 controller, which is this, of course. I'll admit to you guys, I'm not a huge fan of the N64 controller for a number of reasons. I think it's awkward for me to hold. The button layout was okay. I love the fact that it was the analog stick. It really brought that to the forefront of gaming. They're very innovative in that regard, so that I'll definitely give credit for. Nintendo's always done a really good job with being innovative when it comes to controllers. Anything from the original Nintendo NES controller, the BA button, D-pad. They were the first to come up with a D-pad, actually, which is cool. And of course, to the Wii, which is awesome and innovative, and the Wii U. And now we, of course, have the Switch. So every system that Nintendo has done has been very innovative for the controllers. But the N64, for me, is not that great of a controller. Just the layout goes. The Z button's kind of an awkward spot for me, anyway. What Retro Fighters has done is that they've updated the N64 controller to more modernize it. So it's almost like a Nintendo Pro controller. It's like if a Nintendo N64 controller were to marry an Xbox One controller, give birth, this is basically what it would come up with. This is a mix between, they've updated the analog stick quite a bit. We'll take a closer look at the controller itself. I'll show you how the gameplay, how it handles. We'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Let's take a closer look at the package itself. Pretty cool design. And then the back obviously talks about the features. Features in ergonomic and comfortable to-handle design, ultra-fast turbo button, which I'll explain how that works in a second, larger C buttons than normal, preferred for fighting games like Smash Brothers. This is really a great controller to play with Smash Brothers because it's more modernized. Stylish matte buttons, responsive high-quality D-pad, responsive Z triggers, ergonomic replacement for B and A buttons. Okay, awesome. So basically you get like a instruction manual as well. Let's open it up, show you what that looks like. Pretty basic, of course, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to hook this thing up. You just plug it in. But it talks about the Retro Fighters company itself, and then also talks about customer service. They definitely take pride in their product, their social media, and setup. Okay, fair enough. Here's the original N64 controller. Here is the Brawler64. You can see the width. I think the N64 controller, to me, seems more wide than the Brawler controller. They both feel the same as far as matte finishes go. One thing I have noticed are that they mentioned also on the back of the box, the C buttons are slightly bigger, if you notice that, meaning they're actually a little closer together as well. I actually found playing this actually is a benefit, especially with my big ass thumbs. Here's a turbo button. What you do is you hold it down for a couple seconds, and you push a button you want to make a turbo, and then to clear it, you can just hold the clear button here for a couple of seconds. So that's a bonus. If you're playing fighting games, that's a disadvantage, I guess, if you don't have a control like this and someone does. I guess you have to make the rules to be fair. Okay, so the D-pad, you can see it's actually kind of smushed down more than your typical N64 controller. But in most games, to me, I don't really use a D-pad very often. I usually use the analog stick. Definitely modernize the analog stick. You can see they got a rubber top here, so for grip, so your finger doesn't fall off. One thing about the original analog stick is they're kind of cheap plastic. For me, it was kind of a cheap plastic, super sensitive. It's still sensitive, but not as sensitive. You probably won't notice a huge difference. These are R and L shoulder buttons. The Z button, the back button here, they actually added two of them here, the side, and they got a nice little spring to them. You also notice that these B and A buttons are actually matte finish, where the original ones are actually a little bit more glossy. Same with the start button. What else is going on? Okay, so one thing I have noticed is the shoulder button here, the left shoulder button. If you hold it down and use an analog stick, actually you can feel it you can't really tell by the video, but you can kind of feel it graze against it a little bit. It doesn't really affect it much. There aren't many games that you actually are holding down the left shoulder button and using the analog stick at the same time. I have reached out to the Retro Fighters. They explained that they are addressing this issue, so in future shipments that won't be an issue, that will be fixed, and they're coming out with different colors available too, so they're going to have some transparent ones too, which is going to be awesome. So this obviously is the basic one. Not basic, but the standard controller color. They're going to come out with some colored ones and some transparent ones as well. The back, this is where you put your memory card in, your rumble pack, all that good stuff. It is compatible with that, okay, including the third parties. One thing I've noticed is the controller length, the actual length of the cord. It's fairly long, but it's still about 6 inches shorter than the original N64 controller. So it's not quite as long, it's about 6 inches shorter. Not a huge difference, but I always like to have a little extra length. It's always nice because I'm not so close to my TV playing it. So let's plug this in, see how it handles, and let's go from there. Thanks. First game I want to check out is Waverace64. This is seriously one of my favorite games on the system. Early game that was released, and The water effect still blows my mind. As a kid growing up playing this, I was blown away at the graphics, and it still holds up pretty well today, actually. So here I am checking out the Brawler64. I want to test this game specifically because it uses the analog stick fairly well, this game. So far, no issues with any other buttons. Let's see how sensitive the steering is on Waverace, because sometimes this game can get very sensitive steering-wise. And really not too bad. You know, it's not as sensitive as the original N64 analog stick, which is not a terrible thing. I think in some cases the N64 analog stick is a little bit too sensitive. So overall, it controls pretty well in this game. The second game I want to show you is Perfect Dark. This is kind of a follow-up, almost a sequel, I guess you could say, for the GoldenEye 007 for the N64. This is by Rare. Really fun shooter. Shooters just don't age well control-wise for the N64, and a lot of that's to do with they don't have the dual analog sticks, and it's kind of awkward to play. Having said that, with this particular controller, it still doesn't control great, and that's not the controller's fault necessarily. I think the analog stick works fairly well. And man, what a classic game. Makes me want to go through it and beat it again. But yeah, so far, the analog stick works pretty well through this controllers, in spite of just the gameplay itself. For these classic first persons with N64 just don't age very well. No issues with this game. Last game I want to show you is Hang Time, NBA Hang Time. This is like NBA Jam follow-up, I guess, right? The sequel. The controls for this are also kind of awkward, and that's another reason I wanted to share with you this game. I'm going through the options here and pick my team. This is back when NBA, where I actually watched quite a bit of NBA. I don't watch NBA much anymore, but this is the 90s. I grew up in Seattle. I was a huge Sonics fan. Moved to Oklahoma. They moved to Oklahoma City, and ever since I haven't watched NBA, to be honest. But we'll go and choose the Sonics. Rain Man, get him going. Playing Vancouver Grizzlies, who obviously moved as well. How ironic is that? So controls are kind of awkward because a lot of these moves require the C buttons. You have to kind of use your pointer finger in a lot of the controls to do a turbo and stuff. But overall, D-pad works fairly well. It's a little more shallow than the original D-pad. Not an issue though. Definitely prefer the original D-pad though over this one. But controls fairly well. So in conclusion, what do I think about the new Brawler64 game controller for the N64 by Retro Fighters? I think overall it's a pretty decent controller. It does retail for $30 US. It is available for pre-order as of filming this video. I'll put a link below for those who are interested. It's basically retro meets modern. What they're doing is taking kind of a retro feel, they're modernizing it so it feels more modern for those who are used to modern games. I definitely appreciate the analog stick. I think it's improved. The D-pad, not quite as good as the original, but still not bad. Obviously, the only issue I could tell was it kind of rubbing against the shoulder button here. They said they were going to address that, so hopefully by the time these come out to the market to the masses, they'll have addressed that, which is good. And there are going to be different versions available, so you get transparent colors, etc. Overall, I do recommend it. I'm not a huge fan of the original controller, like I said before. I'm curious, what do you guys think about the original controller? I know there's a lot of fans out there for that. I think this is definitely an upgrade, my personal opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you guys soon. Take care, and I appreciate you guys subscribing, as always. Thank you for liking this video. Appreciate you guys leaving a comment. We'll see you guys soon, and game on.